us on Albayan Radio.
Salatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers. Welcome to Ramadan nights on this 26th night of Ramadan, 1444 after the blessed hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm your host Abu Abdurrahman, and I'm very pleased to be joined by my dear brothers Sheikh Farhan and Dr. Omar. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
As always, it's good to have you back together. It's a bit of a reunion, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's been a while.
I feel like it's COVID back.
SubhanAllah, man. But they were beautiful times, bro. We had the
Wallah,
Sunnah
that's
series and
Yeah, maybe we can remind our listeners of what you're referring to.
Yeah.
We had a Seerah podcast. We had a few other things happening.
We did a 2-hour thing on Ashura.
Sure, yeah.
That was
It's all there on YouTube. Whoever wants to go back and
I think that
catch
was
up.
probably one of the best lessons that we've done.
yeah.
That 2-hour sitting that we had for Ashura, just before the night of Ashura. And we went through the Maqtal of Hussein radiallahu anh, and what's the reality of Ashura. It was amazing. That one was a good one.
The most amazing thing is that, subhanAllah, you actually have a completed series.
Alhamdulillah.
That's a big achievement, man. The 40 Hadith and Nawawi.
Alhamdulillah.
That's special. That is actually, that's like a tick. I've actually done that series because, you know what? That's dedication. You know why? Because a lot of people start something, but they don't finish it, subhanAllah. And I know there's many others to come,
Inshallah.
but I'm saying like having a set series of 40 Hadith and then completing that, I think that's a great achievement. And it's online, and I feel, subhanAllah, what you're getting from Sheikh Farhan is very beneficial in that series, subhanAllah. And you can imagine the preparation. The brothers can imagine the preparation, the hard work that,
That was 64 lessons, I think, that we did. All up, 63.
In the 40 Hadith.
In the 40
around
hadith.
63, I think.
63 lessons. But it took us over 2 years.
Was there a point that you'd like just, you know what, this is getting too much?
Look, for that lesson, no. For that lesson, it was a lesson
the preparation. That was out of love.
It was a lesson that was, I had Sheikh Nidal behind me. He was on my back a lot. Let's not lie. But it was the first lesson that I had started after I graduated from Medina. I will always look fondly back at that series because I got married as well during that series. Right? It was like everything, subhanAllah, happened during that. I got very good memories with that lesson. So it took us 2 years. But me and Sheikh Nidal were talking about it. It's the first one in Australia, according to our knowledge, that's been completed, recorded online. Allahu A'lam.
Most likely, yeah, inshallah.
One of. Inshallah. One of. Let's see. There's a lot of people, you're right, they started it, and it was wonderful work, but it never completed. And I honestly, I learned so much from that on how hard it is to complete.
The thing is, there are ones, I've seen them online, even international,
Yeah.
but they're like 5, 7, 8 minutes.
Yeah,
just a quick explanation, but you've got an actual lesson on each.
Yeah, I think
Hadith.
the average time was 30 minutes on each of them. Some of them were over 40, some of them were under 30, but the average time for each lesson was 30 minutes. But there were times where we had to come into the lesson and there was maybe one brother sitting in front of us. Right, so I understand why people say it's easy to just be like, if I do not come, no one will realize I'm not there. It's just a one-off thing.
But the lessons were streamed online in Albayan, so you have a minimum, a few hundred
Inshallah,
extra listeners.
But that's when we don't try to praise ourselves or anything like that, right? That's where the real ikhlas comes in. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to have that continuously and to allow us to be upon the path of al-mukhlisin, of those who have ikhlas, sincerity. Because it's very hard to start something and continue with it when you don't see the fruit of it in front of you. Right? Because you're doing it to create bank in the akhirah. And Ya Allah, accept this from us, leave this as some remnant for us. Maybe someone, a few weeks ago, one of the brothers
some
came.
Fruits. You're going to tell us about some fruits over now, aren't you?
So a few weeks ago, one of my students came. He was a teacher in one of the Islamic schools. He was like, I actually use your 40 hadith to teach the kids in Islamic studies, whatever we're covering. And it's like the first series that I tell people to read. So it's like, okay, alhamdulillah, at least now it's done. It's been done for about, I think let's just say close to 6 months now. And in that time we've started a whole bunch of new stuff as well, with alhamd. But it's definitely a massive learning.
Now you have started Tafsir Unlocked, the Tafsir of the Quran, every Monday nights at Masjid Al-Azhar Belmo, streamed live on Albayan, and it will resume InshaAllah after Eid, so the week after Eid.
Yep, so that's a project that, again, it's one of those types of challenging programs because there's a lot of information. So if we finished Surah Al-Fatiha in about 13 or 12 lessons, and so that, the amount of information that's there can sometimes be overwhelming. I totally understand that. Finishing Surah Al-Fatiha in about 10 to 12 weeks is not easy, you know what I mean? So one person rocks up, he thinks he's going to be a mufassir by the end of the 6 weeks, and then 12 weeks in, we're still on the 7th verse of Surah Al-Fatiha. It's a very tough thing as a student of knowledge to take that. But the concept behind it is we need to focus and dive deep into the Quran. But now with Surah Al-Baqarah, we're going to start Surah Al-Baqarah inshallah when we get back. And hopefully we're going to try to take more content inshallah in a more synchronized, summarized way inshallah. But it just requires a lot of time on the back end. So like one of the lessons that we did with the Tafsir Unlocked, it took me about 12 hours to prepare. One lesson. And that one lesson, it goes 45 minutes, right? 45 minutes of just when we're doing it in the actual class. But behind the scene works, I had to read, 13 different books to get to that one lesson. And everything was referenced and everything is attributed to the person, and I'm translating a lot of the works. So that's a project that I genuinely think will be 15 years plus. Inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us life. I understand why some people think it's not for them, but if someone finishes, I reckon, a year of it, a year of the program, then I think they will see the fruits of it, inshallah. So hopefully we're going to start experimenting with how many verses we can take from how many different mufassirin. So that's the main aim when we come back, inshallah, bi'idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala.
InshaAllah ta'ala. Now for those series you spoke about, they're both available at the Masjid Al-Azhar YouTube channel. And also on Albayan Radio podcast channels as well, and also your personal YouTube channel.
Yeah, so we got all of the lessons that we're doing because I have 3 ongoing programs that we're doing. So we're going through, we finished the 40 Hadith, alhamdulillah, that's done and dusted, walhamd. Now we got the Tafsir on Mondays, we got Riyadh al-Salihin on Wednesdays, and we got Ad-Dat wa Dawa on Fridays. Now Dat wa Dawa for me again is like one of those challenging sit down and really struggle with it because we're going through line by line of the book.
Just the title enough. The title's enough.
The disease and the cure, right?
That's it.
So we've gone through close to a third of the book completed, but we still have about 400 page, about 350 pages to go. So I think that's going to be another 1 to 2 year project, and that's like a really, it takes a lot out of me because sometimes, again, it's that same thing, right? There's the brothers slack off. It's a very hard thing to continue on. You're coming with all this preparation and there's not a single brother with a book in his hand. It's like, come on, you know what I mean? It's tough. It's like, it's not an easy thing to do.
To stay motivated is hard, yeah.
100%. Look, as a teacher, it's hard. So imagine the student. Do you know what I mean? It's not easy.
So after this introduction, as the brothers and sisters would have gathered, today's topic is about knowledge, or specifically advice to students of knowledge. Now, we'd like to welcome all our listeners on 107.9 FM in Sydney. We will be on 107.9 FM in Sydney until after Eid, inshaAllah. And also all those watching on Albayan YouTube and also ASWJ Australia, and all those listening on our apps and Wi-Fi devices. Don't forget to subscribe to all our channels and platforms. Barakallah fikum. Now, whoever would like to contribute and ask some questions regarding this topic, feel free to leave us your comments and feedback or questions on our live streams there, and inshallah we'll try to get to them throughout the program. Now, Sheikh Farhan, I was speaking to some brothers and we're speaking about remaining steadfast after Ramadan, and we said think about how blessed you are in i'tikaf and all the things you can do in i'tikaf, and which protects you from a lot of the haram that's out there. And you got your iman is a higher level. And one of the things we spoke about is how accessible knowledge is when you're in the masjid. For example, here at Masjid Al-Azhar Belmore, they have an imam at each salah. They can easily ask questions. There's lessons after Isha, after Fajr, after Asr minimum every day. So they're in an environment, a beautiful environment of knowledge, good people, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, God-fearing Muslims. So how are you going to, go backwards? You're going to only get better bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So one of the things we advise the brothers is to seek knowledge, and not only seek knowledge, attend structured lessons or courses. Like what you're doing. For example, you're doing tafsir, it's structured. You're doing Riyadh al-Salihin, structured. You're doing da'wah, it's structured. There's many courses out there where you can attend and study and read and follow with a sheikh or student of knowledge. And this is what we advise the brothers. So let's get straight into it. Some advice for students of knowledge, keeping in mind the theme of remaining firm and steadfast after Ramadan. And this is one of the ways to do it, isn't it?
100%. So the first thing is that we have to come back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the most beloved actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the most consistent, even if they're small. So you have to be able to understand that what you are going to do now, your main idea is that you're going to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have to put steps towards whatever you're going to do. And the most practical step that you can take to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeking knowledge. It's the most practical step. When you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's easier for you to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you know about the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's easier for you to follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When you know about what the pious predecessors said about knowledge, about the effects of knowledge on the heart, then it's easier for you to apply all of those into your lives on your day-to-day. So knowledge is something that needs to be sought and it needs to be implemented. And it's not just this theory that you're trying to gain. It needs to be with the understanding that whatever I'm learning, I'm going to try to implement this. Whatever I'm learning, I'm going to try to do it. But the main thing is that we need to now, as a community, generally, to lift our standards and look very, very closely at where I'm going to spend my time. Because the time in a life of a believer is the most important asset he has. So now, someone, like for instance, some of the brothers were saying, your classes clash with my timetable. Right, because I do 1, 2 and 3 elsewhere or somewhere else. So I was like, look, this is what you got to do. You got to look at your timetable and you're going to make a criteria of what you are benefiting from your timetable currently and what the potential benefit somewhere else is or in something else is. So you have the ability now, because you've said, for instance, you've stayed in something for about a year or 2 years or 3 years, but you're not really progressing. It's not really giving you anything. It's not taking you a step further. It's not helping you in your iman. It's basically a hangout and it's a meetup. It's a social Q&A. And then I was like, you got to really assess that and be like, hey, is that where my time needs to be spent? So a lot of this maturity needs to come in of maybe your sheikh isn't popular. Maybe he isn't the biggest sheikh. Maybe he isn't the most knowledgeable sheikh. But maybe you can gain more from this sheikh than you can get from somewhere else. And I think that requires a lot of maturity when it comes to seeking knowledge. So I think after Ramadan, when people are back on that drive, I think they should start off with, where should I spend my time? Pick out the really, really specific classes that they think they can excel in to help them go and move on another level. I think that's something that needs to happen now. If you feel that, you've been in a class and you're not really benefiting from it, then I think maybe you might have to reassess or speak to a sheikh, a third party, and be like, these are my two options. What should I do? And then hopefully that sheikh has an idea of what each of those mashayikh are doing, and hopefully they can help. But I think generally speaking, to get on the ball running as soon as Ramadan ends and join classes. That's the main thing. The public lessons that, like for instance, Azhar runs, Masjid al-Azhar in Belmore, it's public lessons that's open, but the concept behind it is like it's as if you're attending a structured 100%. Class, and it's like you're in a classroom setting, but literally how it's supposed to be under the roof of the masjid. It's the masjid itself. It's anyone can come, anyone can listen, anyone can attend. No one's taking attendance, no one's taking fees, right? It's just an open lesson, free of charge. You come, seek your knowledge, leave. That's all we're asking. Just seek your knowledge. No one's asking you for anything else. So I think these types of things are very, very important. And I think if someone can do that after Ramadan, then by the end of till the next Ramadan, they'll see a massive change, inshallah.
Dr. Omar, it's a blessing to have all these lessons available at your doorstep, basically.
SubhanAllah, I'm just sort of, what's it called?
Reminiscing?
Yeah, on Sheikh Farhan's words.
You had the reminiscing look on your face, that's why.
Yeah, I think people don't really understand the value of it. That's the actual truth. And when we want to talk about structure, when we actually talk about having something in structure, if you're doing anything, you're doing like a first aid course, they don't tell you, just come home, get a pump up and go. It has to be structured because it doesn't leave any gaps. And that's the problem, because when something happens and there's a gap missing, oh wait a minute, I just missed the CPR part. I don't know, you know what I mean?
Dead.
Was it? I don't know what to do. No one can ever say. See, after you complete a course, there's even an exam just to make sure that you've covered. And the exam doesn't have chapter 1; it's got from beginning to end to make sure that you've got a grasp of understanding of all the concept and points. I look at the difference between, when someone goes to a lesson. I know it's not the best example, but if you want to take the concept of, as kids growing up, we watched that Karate Kid movie, right?
Ya Allah.
And he started off as in, I was thinking what example I can give, right? And you remember the wax on, wax off, right?
Jacket on, jacket off.
You know that, and all those actions. He went down to the basics and he was guided by a teacher. And I'm just bringing as a concept that everyone's familiar with. You want to put that into sort of seeking the knowledge type of situation.
Omar, the movie was 50 years ago, brother. How's anyone familiar with that anymore?
No, trust
Mate,
me. That's big, bro.
Bro, his beard is still black. He's still young.
Oh,
bro.
man.
It's Allah
That's
45 years old. How are you saying
mate,
this?
Nah, he's in his 20s, bro. That's all he wants
That's one of
everyone
the
to know.
classics. But like I said, generally the lesson of it is that a person might be sitting and listening to a dars, or listening to a course, and might be thinking man, my iman is not really, I'm not feeling it going through the roof. It's not supposed to. You know what I mean? And again, you want to take it back. It's why am I doing wax on wax? Well, how's this going to help me fighting? It's that you're learning the principles
and the skills.
You're learning the etiquettes. You're learning the skills to a point that in the future you realize that, you know what? I'm actually implementing what I learned during, not the pump-up lecture, but during the course.
In my salah, in my dua,
whatever, in marriage, whatever course that you did.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, subhanAllah, when they're actually teaching, I know myself, when I'm actually giving khutbah or giving a lesson, I'm basing that not of a, and pump-up talks are good, we're not taking away from the, the motivation talks, but a lot of the information that's given was learnt during these structured courses. These, tafsir courses or, explanation of hadith or fiqh classes or whatever it may be. A lot of the da'wah that's given and a lot of the real life situations that you're dealing with, you're not going to find in a pump-up talk. And I'll just give you a little bit of an example. Someone comes up to you and he has a problem, right? That needs to be solved by fiqh, knowing it's halal, it's haram, how to address it. If he comes to you with a problem and you turn around and you say, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brother, what are you doing? That's not going to solve his problem. If he's out there giving him a pump-up talk, he's going to look at it, he's like, I've got an actual problem. I need someone to analyze the problem. And I need someone to give me a solution to my problem according to the Sharia.
Do I give my zakah here or not? Be a man! Give your zakah! Where do I give it?
And fear Allah and don't care what anyone says. Just walk off and look here like.
I get what you're saying.
All right,
I get what you're saying.
Still didn't get my answer. You know what I mean? And I know, for example, now the problems and trials and tribulations between family and marriages and things like that. And I've seen this. I've experienced this before. Where a married couple had a problem. And they came to the Shaykh and he's saying his part and he's saying her part. And the Shaykh just gave him this motivational talk. Like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He puts His blessing on them, on your marriage. And they are looking like, they felt like, on a high. They hugged each other, they walked that next week, they're back at the Shaykh's office. Same situation. Why? Because
you didn't attract the root of the issue.
It wasn't, what's the problem? What's the halal? What's the haram? What's the rights? What's the responsibilities? And so forth. And like I said, yes, the pump-up lectures, they are very important. And the Prophet ﷺ used them on many occasions for certain circumstances. But at the same time, when the Prophet ﷺ, and this is something very important, and we mentioned this, that not everyone can be a scholar. We have to accept that. Not everyone can be a scholar.
We're not expecting everyone to be a scholar either.
I remember sometime brother told me that once he was learning with a sheikh, and he's not on the bright side. And the sheikh goes, listen, don't try, you're not going to be a scholar. You'll be a da'i, but a scholar's mind and lifestyle is different. But everyone can be a student of knowledge.
Everyone.
Absolutely. That does not, the elite and the most intelligent, they'll be scholars.
But they're still students of knowledge as well.
But they're students of knowledge too. But everyone can be that student of knowledge, seeking that knowledge. And if you want to look at it, if you want to look at structured courses, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, how many, I think someone once was telling me that he sort of gave a rough estimate, there's about 500 aspects of fiqh and sunnah from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. But because we're so used to it, we don't realize from waking up, from making wudu, from or waking up, making dua, for example, the way we're sleeping, we wake up, the dua we make, the salah,
how you enter the
how we
bathroom
approach,
to go
how we
to
put our
work.
clothes on, how we brush our hair. He goes, there's like 500 aspects of fiqh in your salah, each aspect, the takbir in your day-to-day life. When you think about that, you're like, subhanAllah, that's a lot, and that needs structure, and that needs understanding of these type of lessons that
Barakallah feek, Dr. Omar. Beautiful advice, except for the movie reference. Barakallah feek. We don't advise our brothers to watch any Hollywood movies. Throw them all in the rubbish and benefit from your time.
Come to the lesson.
Moving on, Sheikh.
come to the
Sheikh Farhan.
come to the lessons instead.
100%. But listen, we got to be practical. We know people are watching, but what we say to them is make sure what you're watching is halal, and don't try to take shortcuts. That it's permissible to look at something for a few seconds, but because the whole movie is generally good, or I can listen to, a few songs as long as the overall benefit is good, and then after a while,
I think let's move on.
It's all pollution. No, but we have to clarify that, because a lot of people are falling for this,
Music is haram.
where they waste their time in saying that there's a benefit here, and they're mixing good with bad, and you get a cocktail.
I would add one important thing to that, exception with the Karate Kid, because I love that movie, but.
No. There's no exceptions.
No, I'm saying a lot of people don't realize one thing, and this was a discussion with one of the mashaykh. This is on a serious note now. Before I mentioned, was just a bit of a joke, but this is a serious note. A lot of movies and a lot of aspects of the movies contain so much aspects of kufr that we don't realize.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
What I mean by that, someone, for example, he traveling back in the past to change the future. Someone, for example,
spells.
Wizards. Who was telling me the guy? I was watching a movie that. It's like life started on another planet, and then robots came here, and they started something here, and like it became like a galaxy type of thing, and how humans came into existence, and therefore it's complete against what we're taught.
Yeah.
And so subhanAllah,
even cartoons at this point now, like they make mockery out of deities, prophets. It's like a very common thing, right? Like that. A lot of the jokes, it's like someone sent me one of the reels, and it was like it's basically this character in an elevator stuck with a prophet, and it's like this, what are you doing? This is running amok with everything that's holy, and everything is running amok with it completely.
Before we move on to the next point, like even the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make dua, supplication, ask Allah to give him beneficial knowledge, and he used to seek refuge from knowledge that does not benefit. And this is what we're polluting ourselves with today, with things. In some cases, let's just say it's mubah, it's permissible, it's not.
And that's like really pushing it.
Yeah, really pushing it. And
pushing it.
What are you gaining? What, how are you improving yourself? How are you upskilling yourself in terms of qualifications? And how are you gaining more knowledge? Our topic today is knowledge, seeking knowledge, advice for seeking knowledge.
That's actually one of the points that I wanted to cover.
In lines with getting better and being steadfast.
One of the things that I wanted to, one of the advices that I wanted to cover was look at where you're spending your time. Genuinely, look at where you're spending your time.
And who with as well.
That's all part of it, right? So again, when we say that the most important thing of a Muslim's life is his time, that's the most greatest commodity that he owns, time. So where is he spending it? A person who's a da'i or a student of knowledge or anything of the sort has the same possibility to waste all of his time just as anyone else can, right? The same, like he can waste his time on Netflix just as anyone else can. Just because he's someone who's giving a khutbah or someone who's giving a lesson in the masjid, it doesn't mean that he doesn't waste like 6 hours a day on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very possible. And you could be watching anything under it. You could be doing it under the guise of news, or you could understanding the sentiment of the community, or whatever you want to try to run away with. But this understanding of where you're spending your time as a believer, and especially as a student of knowledge, is very, very important. And then that leads into self-accountability, and then that leads to being real between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and stop trying to play games with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah,
and that's
one thing you mentioned is, I don't know what to call it. It's like someone, for example, says, "Oh, brother, I don't have a TV." I don't have a TV.
I actually don't have a
TV at all.
I actually don't have a TV.
And then we're like, okay, bring up your analytics on your phone.
Get away from me.
4 hours a day on YouTube, on TikTok, and 10 hours on there.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't got a TV. Like, go get a TV and get off TikTok. Yeah, it looks like it's less of the two evils. I'm saying, like, genuinely, a lot of people are satisfied. Like, you know what? I've achieved something by not doing something, but you don't realize you're actually doing something else.
Yeah, like if you have an iPad, you pretty much have a TV at this point.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
pretty much.
Like, let's just be honest. Like,
you know, you can do everything from it. So, like, the concept of, oh, brother, I haven't got, you know, any gaming or anything, but you got a PC that you're on, you know.
In reality, one of the killers for a student of knowledge is distractions and disruptions, isn't it?
100%. Like,
especially these devices.
If we look at time, right? If we just look at time, if you don't sleep on time, you're stuffing the rest of your day up, right? If you don't wake up on time, you're stuffing the rest of your day up. If you wake up and the first thing you do is touch your phone, then you're going to have a pretty bad day, I reckon, genuinely speaking. If it's not waking up, going to make wudu, praying, starting it off with some dhikr, starting it off with some Quran, like that morning session is very, very important. And that's where the barakah is in the time. But if you look at what you're going to do, then half an hour goes down the drain when you're on your phone replying to all the messages and every DM that you get and every type of thing under the sun, looking at all the notifications, all the emails that you've gotten overnight. If you're going to start your day like that, I generally think that's tough. That's now half of your morning wasted, right? And then you go to Fajr, and then after, even if you stay in the masjid till shuruq, then what happens usually is you have your phone and you get a notification, and in the masjid while you're supposed to be doing ibadah, you're going to waste time again. And then once that notification starts, and then half an hour later you've gone down another rabbit's hole, then you have to go to work. Then when you get to work, then you basically can't do anything there. Then khalas, you go back home. Then the first thing you do is you take off your shoes, you take off your socks, and then you go and you sit down, and you got a lazy boy, and you go and you recline back. I need a 10-minute breather. I need a 20-minute breather. Your 20 minutes now becomes 2 hours. You have dinner and you overeat, and then now all of these things have contributed to you just absolutely stuffing up your day. Where is the study? Where is your time with the Quran?
I haven't got a TV.
Well, I haven't got a TV. And if you're not using your time, a portion with the Quran, a portion in your revision, a portion in your addition to what you have, a portion to your heart softening. So, for instance, reading the biographies of the Salaf, I think that's like the greatest tip that someone ever gave me. Right?
100%.
Reading the works, reading the biographies of the pious predecessors, specifically from one book, Sir A'lam al-Nubala, right, by Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah. Reading just one biography per night. One biography per night. And then after that, you prepare the lessons that you got to do, whatever it is.
Can we give our English listeners an alternative for in English,
okay,
obviously?
Okay, coming to Dar es Salaam in very, very soon. We had it actually before.
Not at night, during the day.
No, don't come at
after. In 5 days you can, during the day, inshallah. I'm at night.
Coming to Dar es Salaam, the brothers in, I think, Philadelphia or in, I can't remember.
Who's this Philadelphia?
In
Publishing houses there.
Sorry, Philly.
Do you like Philly cheesesteaks?
I haven't tried. I haven't got a good one yet. I haven't had a. Anyways, getting out of track.
Yeah, we'll get back to it later. Let's just finish that point there.
There was a book that they published. Hold that thought. After, as soon as we get off. There was a book that was published about 3 years ago, or 2, Allahu Alam, off the top of my head. It was called The Illustrious Noble Woman of the First Generation, or something of the sort like that.
Yes, that's right.
And that came from 2 books, Sir A'lam al-Nubala and Kitab al-Isaba. Last year, they published the English version of the Sahaba, a lot of the Sahaba. It's like an encyclopedia of it, the noble life of like the men of the thing. It's a massive book. It's huge, gigantic. And we're going to get that very, very soon in Dar es Salaam. So give it like a month or so, I think. But I think that would be
like
I don't know, did you mention to our new listeners that you actually work at Dar es Salaam bookstore, and it's basically a family business, goes back to your dad, our Sheikh Rafee, shout out to him. So I just wanted to keep people in the loop.
Albayan is always up.
Well, you know.
My mum's always
shout out to the Sheikh, your dad, bro. What they call them, the OJs, the original, the Mashayikh from the original time, subhanAllah. You know, in saying that, but subhanAllah, something that I always admired from your dad. And if he's listening, shout out your Sheikh.
I don't think
Salam.
I don't think he understands what shout out should be.
It's like Salah told him that. Shout out?
But he's
I shout back at you.
Salams.
I don't think he does salams either, bro.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Now we got it. There.
Now we got
Finally.
SubhanAllah, his structure of lessons, I see it sort of, in your structure too. But SubhanAllah, I remember, because back in those days, like, you had obviously a lot of the pump up talks, and then your father, SubhanAllah, used to teach, and we always had a book. And we had to go buy that book, and we always had, and I still got them, 2 of them, especially the Arabic one,
the Arabic,
the green and
Arabic to the Quran or something.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Iqra publications from US.
So in SubhanAllah, and he would go through it step by step.
The thing is,
step by step, SubhanAllah.
Look, a da'i is always in this dilemma, right? Continuously in this dilemma. What's the dilemma? It's very difficult to run a course, and then you're stuck with, sometimes no one rocks up, because it's not easy, right? And I've seen that with my dad, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect him, preserve him,
Ameen.
give him long life in sihha wal afiyah, inshaAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him barakah in his time and his wealth. I've seen that through my life, that was probably one of the detriments, that the scholars of the past had good students around them. I'm not saying you guys weren't good students, right?
Thanks, bro. I was there today.
But I'm saying
Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
I'm saying that
Perfect time to
Allah, my dad and a lot of the mashayikh before him, right? They had students, the first lesson, 50 people, 30 people, 40 people. How many times he's got this passion for trying to teach Arabic, trying to teach people Arabic. And you just see, because it's an old school method, and it's a tough method, not easy. Not easy.
I remember it
a lot of hafad as well.
I remember it was really hard. Yeah,
it's not an easy thing, but a lot of the times it starts off from 20 to 15 to 3 to 2 to 1, and then that one says, Sheikh, it's
I'll just come to your house.
I just want to rock up with you, Sheikh. I'll see you on Eid. You know what I mean? Like, so I saw a lot of that when I was growing up.
Yeah, but you know what? There was benefit. Like I'm saying, but there and in those ones that did attend, I feel like there were fruits, or it might have started something. You know what I mean?
Inshallah. Everyone, I think, has a different part in the da'wah. I think that's very, very important. But I think it's such a shame that if we look at even a small example like the madhahib, right? Or like, for instance, just take one of the madhabs, just take the Hanabila. At the time of Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, there were other scholars, right, who had people following their way, right? But what happened with Imam Ahmad and the rest of the madhahib, why it became such a flourishing thing of their ilm being spread, was that they had students. Imam Abu Hanifa just had 2 brilliant students. And they basically took that madhab and they allowed it to spread.
That's the old definition of viral.
In
a way, they spread it.
Yeah. But off. Like, it wasn't them initially, right? It was their students. And that was something, like, for instance, there are, off the top of my head, I think it might have been, for instance, Imam al-Tirmidhi, who was walking in one of the janazas with Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, right? So there was a janazah happening, Imam Bukhari was walking, and Imam al-Tirmidhi was walking by his side. If I'm getting the names right, I'm pretty sure this was it. And Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah was asking questions about narrators of hadith to Imam al-Bukhari during the janazah. And then look at how it flourished, right? Imam al-Tirmidhi, everyone knows him now, and Imam al-Bukhari had all these, Imam Bukhari had these great students, like Imam Muslim as well. But they had these great students around them. And I feel like sometimes in the West, that's what we're missing. Great students. It's unfortunate, right? But inshallah, we hope that one day we can produce some students and they can go and benefit, inshallah, elsewhere.
Do you find that it's not verification? You can say verification. When someone legitimately, I'm saying legitimately says this person is the student of so and so.
That's one of the most, like, in Australia and Sydney, it's probably the most misused word, misused phrase, that I am the student of this sheikh.
And then you ask that sheikh, he says, maybe I've seen him a few times in my lesson.
Like, one brother came to me and he called me up and he's like, Sheikh, do you know so and so? I was like, who's that? You know what I mean? Like, I have no clue who that bloke is. He's like, oh, Sheikh, he says that he's one of your students. I'm like, send me a picture of him. Maybe I know him off his face. I don't know his name, mumkin. I'm like, bro, I've never seen this bloke in my life. I've never seen this bloke in my life. I have no clue who he is. And he's trying to get married to someone else and he just dropped the name, right? I'm a student of this. And then other people is like they're dropping fatwa, they're dropping like rulings, legal rulings, left, right, and center. It's like, who gave you? This sheikh gave me that authority. I'm his student. You go back to the sheikh. It's like, no, I didn't. I just spoke. Who's spoke?
I remember there was a situation once where someone said, "Oh, I have an ijazah from so and so sheikh," and then they, when they went to eventually to speak to that sheikh about his Quran ijazah, he said he has ijazah in tajweed. He says, and my 10 and 12 and 13-year-old students have the same ijazah, but he makes it out like it's ijazah of tahfiz al-Quran. So yeah, unfortunately there is that. Where people say, yeah, I studied under. I know generally when someone says I've studied and learnt underneath that sheikh, we're talking like a considerable amount of time, and the sheikh has.
He knows them.
He knows them. Or has vouched for them and say.
And vouched for their knowledge. Yeah. And vouched for their knowledge. And that this person has taken my knowledge. So one of my sheikhs that we had, he passed away now. And he was basically he taught us, I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, it was Abi Dawood in the University of Medina. And when he gave us our ijazah for that hadith that we took, he was like, I need everyone's ijazahs and I need you to put them over here. And then he numbered each one and he had a separate daftar, a separate book where he was writing the name next to the number. It was like this foolproof method that you couldn't stuff it up. So if someone said, Sheikh, does this person have an ijazah? He goes back to the number and he goes, yeah, this person, I gave him an ijazah and this is the date that I gave him the ijazah. But some people take it very seriously. That, yeah, you can't just run amok and say, I got an ijazah from this sheikh and that sheikh. You're going to be Shaykh al-Islam.
Sheikh Farhan, we got our first question. Can we take it or you want to finish that? All right, the brother asks, what are some easy ways to seek knowledge?
Look, easy ways to seek knowledge. First and foremost, I genuinely think it needs to be a systematic approach and starting with the lessons. So it needs to be a balance between self-study and study under the mashayikh and online study. There has to be like a pyramid scheme, right, that you do. The base of your pyramid that you got over here, it needs to be one-on-one study with the sheikh in the masjid. That's your building blocks. That's the base. So find a sheikh that you can listen to, that you enjoy, that you find beneficial and is giving knowledge. Not G-ups, not pump-ups, not that he's screaming at you, no one has a single book around him, no one's writing notes, no one's writing this reference down, no one's saying, what's going on. So that's the first thing. You go to a lesson and it's like based off a book, it's based off some sort of syllabus, some sort of content, and you sit down and you make a proper base with this knowledge. So you go to one or two of those per week. Then after that, that sheikh will usually tell you to read this book or that book, and if you have any questions, go back to the sheikh with that question.
The sheikh's like a mentor here, father figure, guiding you the right way.
You do your self-study, but then you fact-check with the sheikh. Sheikh, did I understand this right? Sheikh, is this, I don't understand this sentence. What's going on over here? Is this okay? Is that okay? You go through yourself, but your marja', you're going back to always the sheikh. That's the second thing. The third thing, and this is the top of the pyramid, but it doesn't mean that's the best. It means this is the smallest amount, right? In the grand scheme of things, in how much you give weight, is the online study. Now, the online study is very beneficial. However, if it's imbalanced, then it can create a very, very big default in a student of knowledge. From the greatest one of them is adab. That usually you see that these self-studied people online have absolutely no respect, no adab for knowledge of the people of knowledge. For knowledge itself, they have no understanding or the depth of knowledge of how to have differences of opinion, for instance, or how to actually hold a conversation with someone of knowledge and how to hold a position in knowledge. You have none of that. Right, so I've seen the biggest detriment to a lot of these online studied and online people who have been studying with mashayikh who have now passed away, which is a relic and is a very great thing. But a lot of these people have not understood the tarbiyah aspect of it and the adab aspect of it, and they can't see what's happening behind the screen, and they don't understand how things were going on, and it's just lost. And then, because they do that, they have this knowledge and they might have a ma'luma, a single one piece of information that their sheikh that's teaching in the masjid doesn't have, for instance, right? Then they grow ahead. Right, then it's like, I am top. I know everything. This bloke doesn't even know this. I just learned this, right? Because I'm studying from his sheikh. But the problem is, what you're failing to understand in this grand scheme of things, how much does this sheikh know that you don't? the one that's in front of you. You might have one piece of information that he doesn't have. But the fact of the matter is that you're studying with someone who's no longer alive. You can't ask him any questions. You haven't gained everything from him. He can't vouch for you. You can't vouch for him. And the issue at hand is that the people who took from these mashayikh, they're the ones that are still here. They're the remnants of that knowledge. So we have to, I genuinely think it's a very sad thing when I see people who have like studied online, just online, and they have a lot of arrogance.
This may come out on the extreme side. I honestly believe that studying online is only break in case of emergency.
Look,
meaning if it's nothing's available, or you know what, let me reword it, maybe supplementary.
It's supplementary.
To assist you. I'm saying purely. We all listen to lessons from our mashaykh and ulama.
100%.
What I'm saying is if there's lessons available, and there are, you should be there if you're serious.
Okay, so like how do you use online lessons? Right?
I had experience of online.
Yeah.
Back then was the London Open and American Open. And the way I structured it was I would sit once or twice a week with Sheikh Khalid, and we would go through, I would highlight everything that I needed to verify, and I would go through it with even though I've listened to the tapes, I listened to the lectures, I made the notes, I did everything, but then I would sit with Sheikh Khalid, and that's when you realize like you can't compare. Listening to something and sitting and the Sheikh going through, and the Sheikh, see, this is what happens when the Sheikh explains something to you, right? He looks at your face
and he knows when you know.
He goes, you know what, this guy didn't get it.
Let me go again.
Let's go down. Let's take it down a notch.
Yeah.
And that's what the Sheikh used to do. He'd say, like for example, do you understand Ammar? And look at it. Okay, let's go back again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you understand? Okay, your brain's fried. We'll come back to it next week.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is, the Sheikh can know how much you can take, what's going on, and you'll be surprised. At the same time, there are things that you will study and think they're correct, but you've actually misunderstood them. Not just that, a whole generation has misunderstood the hadith. But when you go back to the ulama and the scholars, it means the completely different. And if you go back to, we're talking about books of the Salaf, and the Sheikh sheds light on it. That's when I realized, like, obviously the importance of it, and Allah reward, and especially Sheikh Khalid. It was on a weekly thing. Sheikh would sit.
You're referring to Sheikh Khalid Isa, our Sheikh, Imam of the Masjid Al Azhar in ASWJ in New South Wales, just so some of the listeners may not know.
So yeah, that was something I always admired that the Sheikh was able to do, and he would sometimes, point out like, okay, this is what it's taught in the syllabus. This is what's generally taught, but the reality of it is there is a difference of opinion, for example. But sometimes they might not, not to confuse everyone. They're giving you just the basics. You know what I mean? And they said the tarbiyah is on a different level.
There's a comment here I'd just like to throw in because it's in line with what we're discussing now. Before I forget, we also see the character of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for our mashayikh, and this is passed on with intimate and extensive time with our mashayikh.
100%.
Nice feedback. Jazakallah khairan, dear brother.
Something that's important. I hope you don't mind.
No.
One thing is when you're studying with a sheikh, and it's a general lesson. Like say it's not a one-on-one. It's a general lesson, but it's a lesson that's going through a syllabus. There is a sort of adab that you learn when you're unable to follow the sheikh, and you're getting overwhelmed, but you can't stop the lesson and rewind, or the sheikh is going slow and you have to be patient with your ego, and you have to sit through a sheikh that's really slow going through something that you learned maybe 5-10 years ago. And there's this adab that it takes to continue and be persistent and be continuous with that knowledge. There's this adab that's there when you learn from the mashayikh. And like for instance, one of the mashayikh who was teaching Sahih al-Bukhari in the Haram, he reads like haddathana, right? Like it's just everything is lagged. It's like 0.5 minus, right? It's just like it's like the slowest thing that you could possibly do. Sorry, slow mode. But he's gonna go through Bukhari, and Sheikh Umar Fallata, he's gonna go through it, and he's gonna end it, and he's gonna finish it, and he's right behind the Australian student. So if ever we're in the Australian section, you just be listening to that lesson in the back of your mind, and it's there, right? But the people around him were always constant, and they were solid.
The brothers
mashallah.
know that just in case they go, they're looking for an Australian section. It's an unofficial Australian section.
It's an unofficial Australian section.
They call it Australian section, yeah.
But like, yani, there was other mashayikh that were too quick, right? There were other mashayikh that you sit there and it's just like, what's going on, right? Like for instance, one of my mashayikh, when we were sitting in the lesson, he was going so quick. Sheikh Suhaybani, Abdul Qayyum al-Suhaybani in Medina University, he taught us one of the semesters of Hadith. His lesson was too much for us, and we tried writing every word down behind him, and he was just like, and it was like, okay, man,
come on. Come see you next week.
But for us, no, his was like, the door is locked before, just as he walks in. If you come late, you get out. You're not coming in. So we had to be like, Sheikh, look, we want to benefit. Can we please record your lesson so that we can listen to it at home and write down the lesson, please? Because
no.
He said yes,
okay.
right? He said yes. He was okay with that initially, until someone stuffed it up. But that's another can of worms.
Can you stuff it up?
Yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, so that's one issue. So how I would say someone can use the online method is like this. We took a book called Qawaid al-Muthla from Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, which is the essential principles of the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The names and characteristics of Allah. The principles that you need to understand the names and attributes of Allah. So we took that in our, I think, third semester of Aqeedah with one of the sheikhs of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh Abdullah Shamsan. Hafidhahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and preserve him, ya Rab. And this guy was just, I still consider him like an ayah min ayatillah, from like one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This bloke was unbelievable. He was amazing, right, with his understanding of Aqeedah and how he was. So he gave us the principles of this book, and he like instilled it in us, right? That book is like the back of my hand, right? So one time I was looking at the book and I was like, okay, I want to write notes on this book. So I already had that base of notes and base of knowledge. What I did was to supplement that knowledge. I listened to another explanation by Sheikh Salih al-Sindi, which is another professor in the Islamic University of Medina. I listened to his lessons online, and I supplemented his notes and I added to my notes, and I wanted to make something that was extra to what I had. So what I did was I had a base already. So one-on-one with the Sheikh. There was only 6 people in our class. One-on-one with the Sheikh. And then after that, this was the addition to supplement. It complements it, right? So then once you have this, maybe you go through a third explanation of that same book. Not that you just jump from class to class to class. And this other issue that you have with the brothers who are studying online is like, yeah, I've studied Usul al-Thalatha, Kashf al-Shubuhat, Kitab al-Tawheed. We've done Nawaqid al-Islam, and we're now doing Fath al-Bari, and we're studying Sahih Muslim. You ask him one of the questions in one of the books, he has no clue. Because how he's studying it, he thinks if he just listens to it one time, he's studied with the Shaykh and he's done the book. Right? And this is like the difference between a class and just like audio sessions. It's like an audio book at this point, right? You're not really retaining anything from it. There's like, what's the benefit if you're going to forget everything?
It's a universal, non-accepted rule.
Mm.
You go to anyone and you say, oh, listen, send your kids to school. Even homeschooling is face-to-face. The parents have to teach.
Mm.
Send your kids to school or do it online. They say, no, obviously send them to school. Why do you want to send them to school, or why do you want to do homeschooling? Because it's visual. They hear, they see, they listen, they deal with other students. There's interaction, there's discussion, there's debating, there's
arguments,
there's dealing with normal, things of learning knowledge. Even people have this perception that online university courses, the whole course is not online. There is practical components of it, and most of them are just not really the important courses. Like we're talking about the big courses, like medicine, law, engineering. A lot of them you have to be at the university, and Islam is better than all those topics, and more important than all those topics. We're not saying that, yes, as the Shaykh Nadar mentioned, very important for some people. That are very busy. That's the only option. Seek knowledge, but seek it for, what we say is, when you seek it for yourself, that's fine, but don't take that and run with it. And the way that people would go about when they're asked about their credentials, they would never say, I studied online. They wouldn't say, I studied online. They would say, I've got a bachelor's of Islamic studies. Then you start pushing a bit more. But where did you study?
I'm actually going to throw shade. I hope no one takes offense to this. But like...
Can I say it first?
Yeah.
I know
Many don't accept the online study. Is that what you're going to say?
Look, one thing is that a lot of the mashayikh, I had this discussion
They
with
get
one
all
of
their
the-
certificates, Dr. Omar. They're gone.
I had
Me.
Or your certificates,
No one has
online
one.
ones. No, I'm joking.
all of I had
Dr.
this
Omar did go to
conversation-
medical school, so we're not going to...
I had
Only-
this
Podiatry.
You're not really a doctor.
Nah.
I had this.
He can. Listen, that's... I'm going to stick up for him. He can administer medicine, meaning he can prescribe medicine. So,
Bro,
just
when
like
you're
it-
on a
he's a
when you're on a
doctor.
plane and you say, "Is there a doctor on there?" You don't say, "Is there a podiatrist there?"
No, he's got a foot problem.
Hold up.
He's got a foot
I'll
problem.
make it nice and simple. If they said that on a plane, my answer will be very simple. Did he hurt his feet and legs? I'm available. If not, yeah, okay, we could do CPR, the journal, but other than that, as what someone said to me, he said, can you check someone's heartbeat through his feet? Okay, yeah, you can technically, but it doesn't look like it's good. The guys, they're holding his chest. Take his shoes off, let me check his pulses. Doesn't work like that. But yeah,
Look,
tfaddal.
I had this discussion with one of the mashayikh. I'm not going to name who's who. I even had this conversation with a few mashayikh overseas, and it was a very like a unpopular thing to do. I know it's coming from a privileged point of going to Islamic University in Medina and stuff like that, and this bloke's trying to run amok on everyone else. And so the sheikh said, these brothers are good brothers. They've dedicated their lives to the da'wah, and this is good. It's a good thing, right? You shouldn't be like throwing shade for the sake of throwing shade. But you have to accept that there is a limitation. There is a certain ceiling that you can't really cross. And going and traveling for the sake of knowledge, for the pursuit of knowledge, is the path of the ulama and the salaf. And there's a whole different destruction but in like whether this online study, what's the ceiling, what's the issue. And the problem is that with current modern Islamic studies is that we've changed it into a university theme, where it's a bachelor's, a diploma, bachelor's, master's and PhD, where like I've seen and this is mentioned by a lot of the mashayikh, that some of the PhD students, if you ask them a question on tahara in some countries, in the Arab countries, they won't tell you like the shurut, the conditions of wudu or the salah.
You know
right?
the problem, but I see there's the other problem of it is that when you ask someone, says, yeah, I've done it online, that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. Yeah, I've done my studies online, I've done it for this university, alhamdulillah, that's fine. At least we know what you're capable of. But the thing is, where'd you study? Where'd you study? They say where you studied, and they mumble. They're not honest. They're not honest about it. Like I said, I always mention, it was London Open University, American Open University. That I done my online studies.
Brings back memories.
Can I say something?
I wouldn't say that and say I done it from Medina University. Oh, which one?
That's what I'm saying.
Which one?
That's what I'm saying.
Which one? The one in Malaysia.
The one in Malaysia, no.
All right, that's fantastic. If you've achieved, you know what? That's great.
And I have like this.
I will give you all the credit in the world. That's
100%.
fantastic.
Wallah, it's an achievement.
Wallah, don't compare it to Sheikh Farhan that gave up his whole life and sacrificed. No, honestly, and the like.
It's one of the stronger ones, the Medina one online, isn't it?
And sacrifice.
I've seen some of the students that are running.
What I'm saying is that you can't. When you put it in comparison, it has its credits. Yes, does not mean you're not a da'i. Does not mean you don't have knowledge. Doesn't mean subhanallah, as every person.
You might be more knowledgeable than me.
Yeah, but don't hide it. That's what I've got a problem with.
Okay, we've got a few questions to get to.
Just one sec. The problem with this, like for instance, like I've had a conversation with someone.
Yes.
And they were like, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? What are you studying now? What are you doing? I'm studying in Medina. I'm like, bro, you are not in Medina right now. How are you studying in Medina? He's like, one person is like, one brother said, I'm doing the online Medina Islamic University course. I'm like, alhamdulillah, they got good teachers there. That's a really good one.
That's fully online now?
That's fully on. There is Islamic University Medina online. However, the subjects are less, the hours are less. I've seen the curriculum, it just does not make sense. And I've heard a few criticisms and things of certain issues, but let's not get into that. That's one thing. But then when someone says to me, and I've had this conversation as well, where did you study, brother? I studied in Medina. When did you study in Medina? 3 years ago. I was like, bro, I was in Medina 3 years ago. Where were you, lad? He's like, oh, no. I did the online university Malaysia. Okay. I'm like, oh, mashallah alayk. That's good. But there's this like deception, I feel, kind of, I hope no one takes this as in a wrong way.
But that's the
like,
issue.
That I went to Medina. It's like there's a connotation that goes with that you went and studied. And then I feel sorry for the brothers, because I know a brother, I don't know if he wants me to take his name, but there's a sheikh that I know in Plumpton side who actually went to Malaysia and studied there. And I have like This bloke is a sheikh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, mashallah alayh, he took his wife and he went there and he studied there for a whole bunch of years in Malaysia, in the Islamic university that's there. So this whole, this credentials and stuff like that, there's a whole, it's a can of worms, bro. It's a can of worms.
This issue now, especially you just brought it up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into what you think I am, but I'm saying about the Medina students and many other universities.
Yeah.
They get like pumped up when you say you studied in Medina and you didn't. It's like they got that sense of
look, it's like
protection
it's like me saying,
you know what I mean?
Okay, so
can you explain to the listeners why is that so?
Can I say something?
But that's not.
I'm saying in a good way.
No,
not a negative way. Like why do certain university students, like someone was at Azhari back in the day?
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Someone was at Azhari, and then someone comes and says, he puts the hat on, but he's a fake Azhari.
Yep.
They get worked up, because what are you actually doing if you're not living up to?
It's like, those
you're bringing everyone down.
About,
you know what I mean?
Alibaba Express ordered it and what he expected and what he received. Like, it just feels like it's like a knockoff of it. Like, so this is one of the. I want you to think of something, yeah. So say you went.
Remember there was that guy a few years ago. He said he studied in Medina. I forget his name. I'm not going to drop names. There was a guy who was claiming Medina. He was misguided, Hadahullah, and he was saying all sort of stuff.
Fact checked, and
then he was there
was nowhere to be seen.
No, the problem is it's not that if you go look at the big universities, Harvard, Oxford, all those.
Exactly.
All right. So I met a guy once. Like, where you studying? I'm studying at Oxford. Okay. Where? He's telling me, Scotland. I go, what are you studying? He's like, I go, and so university. I go, what about this and that, whatever. He goes, no. At the end, it wasn't Oxford University, it was some Oxford College, like a sort of a downplay, right? Now, if people from the actual university had heard that,
they'd be it's a crime to it's fraud, lad.
Like
it's
10 years ago, if someone told you I studied at Bankstown Uni, you would know. Like, this guy's making it up.
So, like, okay.
Now you can't now because there's a uni there.
So say, okay, this is what I'm saying.
It's not called Bankstown Uni,
so
but
if
anyway.
someone says, I went to Bankstown campus, okay, and you ask him, so the understanding is that he go into UWS, right? The Bankstown, or what's the
new one? Is it? I don't know what I don't know what it is.
WSU, Western Sydney Uni, right? But he actually went to Bankstown TAFE. Let's just be honest. No. Is that the same?
We went there.
I'm just saying,
good old Bankstown
academic dishonesty, dishonesty and fraud when it comes to these types of things. If someone tries to, if he goes with a fake degree and tries to go and apply that degree in the real world, he is held in contempt of being a fraud. You can't administer medicine with an online degree.
We're just saying that just a person be honest. Like, just if it's, I'm sorry, but saying that you've done it online doesn't take away from your credibility as a da'i or as a sheikh.
You've put in hard.
In the end of the day as well, a point I want to mention as well before we move on to some of the questions is that the whole aim of knowledge
lifting
is
ignorance
action.
off yourself.
Yeah, removing the ignorance of yourself and those around you, and action. The fruits of knowledge is action. The fruits of knowledge is taqwa of Allah. And the true ulama fear Allah the most. If that's not resulting in your seeking of knowledge,
what's the point?
Then whether you went to the best university, whether you studied online, locally in the masajid, then what are you benefiting?
Sheikh Al-Albani, to what I know, never went to a university. He was taught under Mashayikh and himself, and he was considered to be a professor of Hadith.
And he went and taught in a university.
Subhanallah. So it's not saying that that's your only path and avenue to be a da'i or a sheikh. We have to make that clear.
But just be honest.
But from history, what history shows is that there's always the sheikh and the student. Always there's a relationship between the sheikh and the student. And the other thing most important is, if you had to resort to that, if you're hiding it, then
you know that there's some sort of shortcoming and that there's some sort of what's that, when
something
someone
embarrassed or
he knows, it's like he understands that there's something that he wants to hide there. He's not really proud of it. He's really hiding it on the down low.
Sheikh Al-Albani as well, he got like tazkiyah from the big ulama at that time, who basically gave him the big tick, like Sheikh Ibn Baz. Like,
it's not the only.
That's huge. That's bigger than all these universities put together, basically.
Like my university, I just want to say something, right? My university degree, I personally, I genuinely think it's just a piece of paper that could be in the garbage for right? I don't hold it in some sort of I'm being honest. I don't want this to be, because I know people who have graduated.
You got to respect the university.
I'm saying I'm not disrespecting the university. That is
so don't throw it in the bin there, no?
That was the greatest blessing to us. Change the name.
Just give up
liquid paper. I genuinely think that it's one of those things that it was a blessing, and I have to understand that. But it had its limits. It had its limits, and if I didn't do my study outside,
100%.
If I didn't do my study outside,
it's very important.
And I didn't study with the mashayikh, or I didn't do just even if it was my self-study, which I fact-checked with the mashayikh that were there, then a lot of the time I saw brothers that were wasting their time. I saw brothers that weren't up onto the standard.
Yes.
And so there were different, like I asked one of the brothers was talking about one of the brothers, and he's like, look, there's two types of students. There's the good students.
That's what
and
he means.
there's
There's two types.
right, there's two types of students.
One's a maqbool, they just got through.
Yeah. So and one's got like
that need the certificate to teach at a primary school in some Arab country, and ones that actually want to be teachers and mashayikh.
Yeah.
There's two different. Yeah.
So look, my university degree is a blessing. I don't want to take anything away from that, but in saying that, I don't think it's going to get me to Jannah, or it's my ticket to knowledge. And just because I have that now, my pursuit of knowledge is now completed.
The books is all done.
It's like I have in my library. What do I do? Set it to flame now. Set it to flame because I got a degree now. It's like, bro, come on, relax.
Knowledge is also from as I say.
But like it's a university degree. It shows. One, I went to Medina for that many years. I sat with the mashayikh for that many years. We did a certain amount of study, and I have taken certain subjects that I passed in a level that was satisfactory to the university, and I got a distinction when I left. Right, so alhamdulillah, ni'ma baraka. I have tazkiyas from some of my mashayikh that we studied with, some ijazas from our mashayikh that we studied with, and alhamdulillah, I think I scraped through, walillah alhamd, and that's a benefit for me. But like, I feel like it's a bit like rubbing salt on a wound when someone says, you guys didn't really study. You know what I mean? It's like, Habibi, what did you do?
In every profession, but in every single profession, there's something called continuing professional education or whatever way.
Upskilling.
With any degree of responsibility, even, to the point of engineers, or they're always, and in the medical field especially, there's, continuing professional education, or they call it CPD point, where you have to keep a level of updating your knowledge on a consistent basis.
100%.
Why? Because again, it does not mean that, and there's something very important a lot of people don't understand. A degree in Australia or anywhere around the world is just a degree. It doesn't mean anything without a registration. Does that make sense? So a lawyer is not, he studied law, but he's not a lawyer until he gets into it as a thing. Or a doctor until he's actually registered. That's when he's, whatever. Or anything, an engineer until he's registered. That's when he can start signing off saying, yeah, it's okay.
Even if you're a Sparky, you know what I mean?
Every license or registration. So for someone to say that, for example, I'm a lawyer or I'm an engineer. Yeah, but now they class it as you're non-registered or non-licensed, right? So they make it clear. So what does the licensing do and the registration do? To say, okay, you've studied, you've learned, you're upskilled, and you've ticked all the criteria to do your job properly.
I think like a nice example is, imagine someone goes to university and gets a PhD in Bachelor's of Arts, right? In the arts, right? He goes and he's like in history. He gets a PhD in history, but he goes around in a costume with the proper gear of a doctor and walks around saying, "I am Doctor So and So." Right? It's just like, it's a phony type, and that's a lot of the time. It does rub salt a little bit to show like in my first day of Medina, right? The first day that I went to Medina, I cried myself to sleep while I was holding my bags, right, on myself.
Because you missed us.
I didn't. No, because I was put in the story of my days in Medina.
I think that's what made him happy when he's singing about us.
That's what got me through. But I remember in one of my classes in Quran, the Sheikh was correcting my Fatiha. Now, when I was here, when I was leading prayers, it's like, okay, he's got an okay recitation. He's doing okay. Like if I was in a saf, they'd be like, all right, you lead, right? And I go here, and I'm in Masjid Nabawi. I'm like 30 meters from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 40 meters from the Prophet sallallahu, and this bloke is just ripping into me, and I remember sitting down, and I cried, and I was like, I can't even read Surah Al-Fatiha properly. I'm a dud. You know what I mean? And I just remember it broke the nafs at that stage. We still have a massive way to go with our development and whatnot. I was saying at that moment, that was something that was crushing. You know what I mean? And that can only happen face to face, in person, and that sheikh was an Abyssinian sheikh, right? He was an African sheikh, and he was rough, and he was a big sheikh, mashallah. And when you make a mistake, sometimes he'd like get his finger and he'd put it into your...
I love him already.
And I just remember when he did that to me, I just went back and I was sat down and I was broken. And that only happens when you go and like you study and you have to experience it. I remember the first class that I sat in Kullit al-Hadith, the faculty of Hadith. I sat down and I was hoping to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was making dua, Ya Allah, do not let this man ask me a question. It was one of my Sheikh Ali Abu Batain, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him, one of the teachers of Masjid Nabawi. And he came in the first class and he said, who is this book written by? And he was like, okay, Fathul Bari, who is it written by? Al-Minhaj Sharh Muslim, who is it written by? Al-Hidayah, who is it written by? Tamheed, who is it written by? Istithkar, who is it written by? And giving these names of these great books written by the ulama of hadith that are known. Now I look back and I'm like, they're easy questions, right? But that day, it was like some of the books, it was the first time I heard the names, and this bloke is asking me, who are the authors of these books? And I remember sitting there and I'm like, please, Ya Allah, do not iftah me in front of this person. It's the first time I'm seeing him. Do not do this. Do not disgrace me over here, Ya Allah, in front of this man on the first. And then he ripped this comment at the end. He said, if any of you don't know who any of these books, who wrote these books or didn't hear of these books, change your faculty into Kullit al-Da'wah. Go, you don't even belong here. And I was like,
it's a competition between the faculties there.
That class, we dropped numbers of about 15 students just left straight away. They're like, yeah, we can't deal with this. I persisted in that class. I believe I came second or third in that exam. Walillah alhamd. That exam was probably the easiest thing I ever did. Why? I just buckled down. I lived through that semester. You know what I mean? It's like, but where did I get that from? If I had buckled, right, it was easy. People left the university because of that class. I know 3 people who left the university because of that one class. They couldn't hack it. He was like, what's this? What's this? All right. And then I came here to learn. But it's a university level. And you're coming here with no previous study.
Barakallah fiqh, Sheikh. We're running out of time. We asked, to summarize these points and get to some quick questions, which we'll just give short answers to because we haven't got much time left. And we do advise the brothers to continue seeking knowledge without university, in the masjid, and if there's a need, even online. Barakallah fikum, dear brothers and sisters. And the aim of this class is not to put the aim of this program or this particular topic is not to put anyone down.
100%.
It's to lift people
up,
to set high aims and have high goals and aspirations. But sadly, even if you look at the online comments, there's just some people, like we said, it's evident that they don't have adab because the way they give advice is not the best way. So we'll speak about that another time.
Is that one of the questions?
No, a few quick questions.
Okay, I thought today we got some hate.
No, sister asks, what knowledge do you recommend for a busy mum who homeschools her kids? I've only taken tajweed lessons and would like to go deeper into deen.
Okay, so the first and foremost thing that you need to come to, InshaAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you, protect your family, protect your children, Ya Rab.
Ameen.
The first thing that you need to double down on is the study of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need to know your Lord. You need to know who is Allah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love, what He hates, what are the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That is first and foremost paramount understanding of what you need to do. That's the first thing. Once you finish that, and you can do that through easy books, inshallah. And lessons that the mashayikh,
a lot of tawheed courses available.
A lot of tawheed courses that
that's a must for every Muslim.
That's a must. The second thing after that, I generally think, is once you've covered that to a sufficient degree, where you've read generally three books on that, then you go into the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you create a skeleton of the seerah, just a basic seerah, that you know that Badr was before Uhud. Why did Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam leave for Badr? He left out to get the caravan went away, and he knows it in dot points. Just a skeleton of the seerah. That's the second thing. And after that, then it's just implement as much of the sunnah in your household and instill it in your children. So basic things that you can take on, like for instance, something like eating with your right hand, drinking in threes, things like walking into the bathroom with your right leg, walking out with your left. These types, walking in with your left leg, walking out with your right. These things are very, very important of the practical implementation of Islam in your household, because that is what your children are going to take when you're not there anymore. It's that example that you've left behind, using a siwak at home. Right? These little basic things, right? Waking them up for salah, waking them up and making sure that they're making their wudu properly.
The waking up for salah, that's very important.
Yeah.
Because we find people, even the children at the age of puberty and for salah, and they're haram, let them sleep, they're tired.
We should even give them higher aims and objectives and to pray in the masjid.
Yeah.
The higher you set the bar, alhamdulillah, they'll have high aspirations that if they miss in the salah in the masjid, at least they'll pray on time at home. But if you put the bar low, then what's going to happen?
So something that she said, that she was a busy mum, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things is, okay, make the most of your time. So you're going to be doing, I don't want to be gender specific or anything like that. We don't want to get cop smack for that. But you're going to be a lot of the times doing housework, I'm guessing, because you said you're a busy mum. So a lot of the things that I understand from that is that you have time to listen to things while you're working. So now you use the benefit of YouTube. Right, or
Albayan Radio,
Albayan Radio playlists. You use the benefit. So the thing that I would do, I would ask a sheikh, I have this amount of time. What are the playlists that I should listen to? What sheikh should I take from? Where should I listen to? And what should I avoid? Because if you know, there are some people on YouTube who are very popular.
Just open up the door on yourself. Inshallah, Sheikh Farhan on his Facebook, he's gonna actually make a little list of possible playlists that people may benefit from.
They can send us a message and we'll do it, inshallah, no problem. We're more than happy to do it.
I've
and
actually closed my Facebook DMs.
If that particular sister as well sends us a DM or a message to our WhatsApp number, we'll send her a radio as well and some playlists.
Whoa, he's sending a radio, mashallah.
Why not? You can pick it up from Dar es Salaam bookstore. Or you can pick it up from Dar es Salaam bookstore in Lakemba. We'll send some, inshallah. Moving on to the next question. It's just a few tips.
Yeah, please.
Another, I don't know if it's a brother or sister from the name there. Assalamu alaikum. When is the best time to memorize Quran?
The time that you have right now. Just straight up. So if you're looking at time in a day, so there are two parts of the day and the night. The Quran is a day thing and a night thing and a morning thing and an evening thing, and the way that you revise is what Shaykh ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah stated, that you revise in your prayer. So that's the easiest way to do it. So I would suggest, there's no age limit to learning the Quran and memorizing the Quran. It's something that you're going to do to the end of your days, because you're going to have to revise what you've memorized. That's the first thing. But if you're looking at, like, say you have the morning time after Fajr and before Fajr, that's the best time for you to get the hifth out of the way. Then after Asr or after Maghrib or after Isha is where you revise what you've taken in the morning and you revise what you've taken previously. And then the next morning you add on to that. And it's just continuously, but the morning and the evening, and you revise constantly through the day, through what? Your prayers, and you establish the Quran in the prayer.
Barakallah feek. Salam from John Constantine. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sister Anna says, Assalamu alaikum. Very interesting talk. Alaikum salam. Do any of you know much about the Charles Stewart University courses? We're getting asked about that. Maybe we'll answer that another time, since we can go back to it.
There are some.
What is your advice on studying Islamic studies online at Charles Stewart University? They partner with an organization in Auburn called Isra.
Okay, so again, you have to understand what is your requirement of getting a degree, right? So some brothers have to get degrees because they want to go overseas to teach English somewhere else, and they want to do hijrah from Australia, and they want to go and get a degree, but they need a master's to do whatever they're doing. If you're doing it to get knowledge, if you're doing this course wherever it is, but when you understand that it's a Western university, Charles Stewart, for all I remember, wasn't an Islamic university. Yes, they have partnered with another organization which are Muslims, and I genuinely think they're very sincere Muslims as well. I've heard very good things about the brothers and sisters at Isra. However, we have to understand that they come from a certain theological point, and it's not necessarily representative of the entire broad spectrum of Islamic studies. So they're coming from an Ash'ari perspective, and they have their studies accordingly, but there are Arabic programs that brothers have done. We know some of the brothers who have done it. So I would suggest, if that was the only option, right, for someone to get a degree and go overseas to live, then that would be something that someone can take. How they would do it was, I'd say, establish yourself in knowledge, that you can understand what your aqeedah is first. Establish yourself in some fiqh before you go into anything. Make yourself a student of knowledge. And then, if you had to, and I genuinely don't know, like if someone wants to be a teacher in this country, for instance, and they can't go overseas, right? And they're online universities, they don't cut it. So they have to do something like this to be an Islamic studies teacher, for instance, or something like that. So you have to really look at it closely. It's not the first option. It's definitely not the best option. Not in my perspective, and that's my humble opinion, and you can disagree with me or agree with me.
At the end of the day, any institution, you weigh it up to what they're teaching.
100%.
If they're not
100%.
teaching that which is in agreement with the Quran and Sunnah, then with all due respect, no matter how sincere you are, we don't advise anyone to go there, because the most important thing for a Muslim is their aqeedah. Now, no doubt there's brothers who have benefited there in certain sciences,
in Arabic,
but they had knowledge, prior knowledge to entering there. So what we advise all our brothers and sisters is go to institutions and universities and colleges which, number one, the aqeedah is sound. Do not put yourself in doubtful positions where you're putting your deen, your aqeedah, at risk of being polluted. And that's the best way I can say.
And sometimes, like one of the brothers who did it, right? He wrote a essay, and he was talking about the athari perspective on one of the issues, and he was marked harshly to it, right? So he questioned the mark that he received, and they did an internal review, and it went to a third party, and he actually got the mark that he deserved. It was remarked, and he did okay at the end. He got a distinction on it. I do HC, but just the understanding of it, that you're not studying your professors. Like for instance, that what defines our universities in the Islamic world and these universities. Like for instance, my sheikh who taught me aqeedah was a student of Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, who was respected by the mashayikh of the place that we were in, which is literally the hub of scholars, Al-Medina, in Saudi Arabia. And they had the tazkiyahs from their scholars and their sheikhs, and so we knew the chain, right? Whereas a lot of the teachers over here, you don't know where they've studied.
I've heard some can be non-Muslims too.
Sometimes, maybe in some of these universities, that your teacher might not be
You have
Muslim.
to know who you're taking your knowledge from.
So, Ibn Sirin, he said, this knowledge that you're taking is deen. It's a matter of religion. So look at who you take your religion
100%.
from.
Number one.
Right? So we knew our teachers. And sometimes we had issues with some of our teachers who were teaching us Arabic once. Right? So we had one time, one of the Arabic teachers, he had an issue in aqeedah. We went and reported that to the deen. And we were like, Sheikh, this is what's happening. So like, we had certain things that were going on, and we knew the chains. We knew where everyone came from. We knew that this person studied from this person, who studied from this person. He vouched for him, and this is where he studied. And this is his credentials. This is his works on Islamic studies, and the response to his works have been agreed upon and accepted by the Islamic community. There's so many things that go behind it, right? But over here, you have a person who is not necessarily a mahir, an expert in his field, nor is he an expert recognized by the experts in that field, right? So the experts of, for instance, aqeedah don't say, you know what, that guy in Australia is okay. You know what I mean? No sheikh has said that about a sheikh.
Regardless, it's always going to be watered down to
something that's approved.
To fit the university
Barakallah
standard.
fikum.
But yeah, subhanAllah.
Any other questions?
Pretty much wrapping up for now. That fly's been quite annoying, hasn't it, Dr. Omar? You haven't noticed the fly flying around? You must be just you're fully glued in, fully focused, huh? Have you noticed that fly?
I just want to.
I didn't want to fall over trying to take it out and make a viral moment for our viewers and listeners.
I haven't noticed anything.
Haven't you noticed the fly flying around?
No,
Were you thinking about the Philly cheesecakes? Philly cheese.
Philly
what are they called again? Philly cheesecakes. That's something else. Philly
steaks.
Philly cheese. Philly cheese.
Just one thing I just really want to underline is that
go for it. There's the
because
fly. There
people, I don't want people to misunderstand that when we're talking about online, it has its place, it has its credentials, it has its credibility. I just saw it now. Has its credibility.
It's getting on my nerves.
We're focusing more on the point that, say it as it is. You know what I mean? There's nothing.
And recognize it for what it is as well.
Like if you've been to TAFE, say I went to TAFE. If you've been,
own it.
Own it. There's no shame in it. If anything, right? If there's
no stigma, it shouldn't be attached to it.
If someone's gone to TAFE and done a course, his income can be more than someone that's done years of study and whatever.
Can we take one more comment so we can wrap up?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm really enjoying tonight's program. I have benefited so much from the Sharia women's classes at Belmore. Shout out to Belmore. and face-to-face learning is the best type of learning. I didn't make that comment up. It's actually here.
Were you on your phone before?
No. Jazakallah khair, dear sister.
Look, I genuinely think the standard that we have. Look, there are certain mosques that are just busy. That are just busy with ilm. Whether it's Arabic lessons, English lessons. Alhamdulillah, I genuinely am proud to be part of this masjid, in the sense where I don't get paid from the masjid. I don't have an official title. I'm not part of the shura. I'm not part of anything in this masjid. I come on Monday nights.
You're part of our heart. How can you say that?
I come on Monday nights. I do my lesson and I leave, right? But I respect the fact that I have people behind me, in the sense where if I feel sick, then I get people telling me, hey, maybe you should just still rock up. You know what I mean? Like, can you still come?
Who's telling you to do that?
There's a guy who's got a massive beard in front of me, bro, that I'm not gonna argue with. So look, there's a lot of focus that goes on with the knowledge that is spread over here, and I genuinely think that we have to call a spade and be very proud of that. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, whoever hasn't thanked the people hasn't thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to give thanks where it's due, that this masjid, Masjid al-Azhar, is a beacon, in the sense where there is a lot of khair that has come here. Sheikh Muhammad Du'ar, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect him, preserve him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him success in this world and the next. Wallahi, him finishing his Kitab al-Tawheed from Sahih al-Bukhari is a momentous occasion for the people of Sunnah in Australia and in the West. That a person has covered in English an entire commentary of a chapter of Sahih al-Bukhari online recorded is an unbelievable feat.
The most important chapter, Kitab al-Tawheed.
Exactly, Kitab al-Tawheed from Sahih al-Bukhari, and now he's doing al-Ha'iyya. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his classes. But to have someone that's dedicated to come in, right? Dedicated to come in and finish something that's as momentous as that, it needs to be.
82 lessons, I think.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think 82 lessons, all available on Masjid al-Azhar YouTube channel, and also Albayan. You can check it all out.
Before you end, just one thing, just to tie this all together, as why we're emphasizing on this. I remember one of our Deen Mashaykh would say, the most dangerous thing you can have, he said, the most dangerous thing you can have is knowledge. And we're like, what do you mean? And sometimes you ask a question to trip someone out, get their attention. What do you mean? Most dangerous thing you can have is knowledge. He goes, all right, let me explain. Knowledge that you seek, if it's bad knowledge and evil knowledge and wrong knowledge, that can never be erased. They would always be there. So if someone, for example, has knowledge to do a certain type of evil, for example, even if he makes tawbah and he repents, that knowledge of how to do that will always remain somewhere in his mind.
Qabil type thing. First murder.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, it's that knowledge, if it's seeked wrong, even if you rectify and you seek sort or whatever, it would always be available or stored in that mind. It's not something that you can sort of erase completely. So he said, the mind's like a vessel. Be careful what you put into it, because if you start with pure knowledge and righteous knowledge, then that's the path that you continue towards.
Something
paradise.
that I think. Okay, I'm gonna one last thing, and you can kick me out.
Go for it.
I'm kicked off already.
The aim of a student of knowledge is not to be famous, is not to give lessons, is not to be known in the community, to be respected in the community. It's none of that. It's to spread Quran, Sunnah, according to understanding of the pious predecessors. I want you to understand something. There are days that I am in fee to give a lesson, right? Because I am afraid to say something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His Messenger that is not true. Right, so there are, I'm afraid of a slip of the tongue. Wallah, I am afraid of it. I am scared. You don't understand of how detrimental it could be where you say something in one way and it's even perceived in another way.
And you have people saying, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, and I think maybe I can't remember, maybe the Prophet said that. If he didn't say it, then he probably meant it like that, or he probably would have said it if he...
Or this is sahih and this is da'if, right? And just like, that doesn't sound sahih. Bro, what's wrong with you? No, but just, you don't understand the amount of strain it puts. Wallah, if you really want to do things properly, it's very difficult. It's very easy. I can give right now the maddest, most emotional talks type possibilities, right? Based on all da'if, mawdu', kadhib, batil, dajala, right? All these stories. My sheikh had a dream and that sheikh was given a piece of bread by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he woke up and the bread was in his hand. Wallah, I just heard that last night. Right? So I was like, are you kidding me, bro?
What type of bread was he saying?
Oh, I don't know if it had simsim or not, or black seed on top of it, right? But he's like, I'm like proper, like next level batil, right? I can rip those stories. We've read it, we know it. We can do those books if they're fun, they're enjoyable to read, right? But the scariest thing is to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what is not correct, and to say about the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam what isn't correct. It's the scariest thing. When I read, when I read an ayah or a hadith, I'm petrified. Even if I have it hifth, even if I've memorized it, I am petrified to say it incorrectly. Right? Genuinely. Why? Is because it's a mas'uliyah, it's a responsibility. And I'm only doing this because I feel like there's a need for people to be doing this, because I don't think I'm up to the scratch, right? I don't think I'm up to the standard. But there's a need for da'wah in the sense where, if not me, then it's going to be someone who's going to be, who won't be able to even read it to begin with. You know what I mean? So I'm going to start from somewhere. Someone has to do something. So this idea that everyone needs to be doing da'wah, everyone needs to be known, and everyone has to have an Instagram account that needs to go viral, and everyone needs to just run amok with it. We have to be you're a student of knowledge to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
100%.
Right? You do this for the sake. You don't get rich off this. You don't. If I had to start a side hustle and put that 11 hours that would prepare for a lesson into some sort of business, I would make money. You know what I mean? Like, just by the scheme of things, of how the world works, if you put effort in something, you're going to monetize it, you're going to do okay with it. But this is effort that needs to be put in, and we're doing it for one's sake, to spread the da'wah. Right? It's not for personal glory or personal gain. We're not doing anything for it. Sheikh Nidal, have I ever asked you for a check?
Not yet. No, barakallah feek.
Like, it's not something that it doesn't.
Is that a hint?
It doesn't.
You're trying to hit something.
It doesn't pay well. It doesn't, like, let's be honest, right? It takes. I missed my niece's aqiqah. Do you remember? Or my nephew's aqiqah. You told me to come give a class on the aqiqah day. Do you remember?
I don't remember that.
I remember it.
You remember that?
He was like, aqiqahs come and go or something like that. The lesson is on, right? And he's like, and I rocked up. I missed my own, like.
That was poor planning. On whoever booked it on a Monday.
Bro, it's sunnah to do it on a certain day.
He's right.
What's wrong
Is
with
it?
that? What's wrong with you?
7th day or 4th day.
7th day, yeah. I didn't know that.
It was the 7th.
I thought it was later on. It was the 7th day.
It was the 7th day.
Oh, I'll take that back then.
And so I missed that. I
remember we just did take it back.
I remember
we have to.
I remember the week after I got married, you told me to come in. All right, to give that, I gave a 20-minute lesson that day.
Is that when you came in straight from your honeymoon straight here?
I didn't even go. No.
So just back from your honeymoon.
Allah Hadi. After that, the only time I got off is when I went to New Zealand. When I went overseas, but I still rocked up to the lessons like the week after. It's like, alhamdulillah, that like there's a. It's not in.
If you're doing it for the dunya and for wealth. This
is not the trade.
Listen, I'll finish with this from my end.
Yeah.
I subscribe to the view that in da'wah we don't have clock on, clock off.
Yeah.
Sign on, sign off.
Yeah.
It's a 24/7
gig.
And you live it, and you ask Allah to accept from you.
Is that why we're going
because
to
listen,
talk?
when you want to ascribe yourself or subscribe yourself to وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Who is best to be from those who are best in speech? As Allah tells us, those who are best in speech are who? There's no one better than those who call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are sincere in calling to Allah. But if it was easy, everyone would do it. If it was easy, everyone will do it. So what we're saying is it is life consuming, but the rewards are so huge, because this is the way of the prophets, to call to what they call to live how they live to. So there is sacrifices and a balance as well. It's a balance. And like I always try to, how can I say, keep the programs that we are running regular and constant, and put them priority over everything, because I believe they're priority. I believe that teaching Tawheed, calling to Allah, teaching the Sunnah is our salvation. And if we don't do it, then Allah may replace us with someone else. And that's what I fear, that we have been given a responsibility. and we drop this responsibility and we leave it, and then this may be a cause for our misguidance and others to be misguided. And this is what I truly fear.
Look, something that's scary. Look, we have to, I know we're, how long have we gone this?
We're wrapping up.
Okay, there is this culture that's around now of the celebrity da'wah culture, right? And we have to see that it's there. And there is someone who is going to be affected, and it's like, I want to be like that guy, where I get chased down and I get people ask me for pictures and people ask me for an autograph on a book that I write and stuff. He will be affected by that. There's going to be one person at least. And then you understand the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ of the first people who are going to be dragged on their faces to the hellfire, right? The scholars and those who were reciters. And this whole concept of reciting in front of a camera and not the Taraweeh, I'm saying just general, I'm very scared. I'm very scared of if your intention isn't upright as a student of knowledge. This is advice to students of knowledge, right? And you guys have to understand that we don't have to make those contexts and if your niyyah isn't upright, then you're going to have a very hard time in Yawm al-Qiyamah. You can't play games with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sincerity is very important.
100%. That's at the end of the day, if you're not sincere and you have something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then at the end of the day, you're just digging a hole.
Yeah, to be sincere, to be regular and constant on the path, sticking to the path, because it requires patience. In being a Muslim in general requires patience. This world is not for us. This world is a prison for us. Our home is Jannah if we stick to Islam, stick to the Quran, stick to the Sunnah. Dr. Omar, wrapping up, any final comments?
I think we ended there. Wallah, it was a beautiful, subhanAllah, discussion with Sheikh Farhan. And I feel like giving the insights of Medina. I think a lot of people, they really, because people always thought what it's like to be in Medina, what's the feeling. And I think a bit of that emotion that you put, subhanAllah, gave a lot of people a nice insight, subhanAllah, and the struggles of seeking knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Other than that, alhamdulillah, inshallah, we have many opportunities for Sheikh Farhan to be available again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy.
Sheikh Farhan, any final comments? Kept you longer than expected, but
look, I feel like because I had my operation early Ramadan and I couldn't come in, Ya Rab, because I couldn't come in, I feel like you guys are getting me for the whole amounts missed as well.
Yeah, well,
so I just on the comment that that glorification of certain things, right? I still remember the first moment that I walked inside of the university in the actual uni. I remember walking inside.
Tech Man wants us to keep going because he reckons that the brothers and sisters are requesting for more.
Keep going or stop.
Okay, so
well, if he was really serious about that, the coffee would have came in.
My Red Bull finished a long time ago, my man.
No Red Bull. No, forget about it.
No.
Healthy drinks.
I gotta go, bro.
Wrapping up, bismillah.
So I was just saying that I remember the first time that I went into Building 7, which is like a place that I had to crash for a night or two after I went to my first room. And that my first room was outside of the university because they had dorms outside. So this is the first time that I'm actually in the university, in a dorm in the university.
Building 7.
Building 7 or Building 8.
That sounds
it was like I walked. 7. I remember walking into the bathroom, akramakumullah, and I spewed up, akramakumullah, from just the stench. It was the worst experience of my life, and I was like, this is not something they put on the brochure, and no one mentioned this. This is false advertising. You know what I mean? And that I didn't start a single class, and I still, I genuinely fear for the state of the da'wah, in the sense where the next generation that comes is going to be very superficial, and we just need to fix that before it happens. Because if it's people just trying to get this fame and get and there are people that are famous without a single inch of knowledge, and that's even scarier. You know what I mean?
So could we say the struggles of learning makes you appreciate the knowledge that you've received?
But if you can be patient on that to begin with, that's something, right? How many people rocked up, and I remember the first week they left. Right, the first week they couldn't, and they took someone else's spot as well. Right, they got accepted. They tried to, and I know one brother. I remember he tried to get admitted into the university for 3 years. He got in. He walked in and he saw the state of the building. Right? Just the building. And the way that the guy talked to him from behind the counter. Right? The guy he was just like, nah, I'm not dealing with this. And he left. 3 years. Gone down the drain like that. Right? And he took someone else's spot in this whole drama. Right? But not many people finished. In my list we were accepted, I think there were 7 names, only 3 of us finished. Or 2 of us finished. The rest of them, they didn't even last a semester or 2. Right, so it was very, very sad. But that's just the reality of it. We have some of the highest drop-off rates from the Western world into the Islamic University of Medina, because it's this ego that we have and this ethos that we try to carry around ourselves, that we're better than it, we're beyond everything, and no one can tell us that we're wrong. But anyways, my main advice to students of knowledge here, wherever they're listening from, is the most beloved actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the most consistent, even if they're small. So be consistent in whatever you do. Be consistent in whatever you do in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your efforts, your studies, your time and your wealth and your families. And inshaAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us what we do in this world and the next. Barakallahu feekum. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa jazakumullahu khairan.
Wa iyaka. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Omar. Sheikh Farhan will be back with us at Masjid Al-Azhar, Belmore, upstairs, on top of the radio station here at Belmore, 1 week after Eid. 1 week after Eid for Tafsir Unlock Series, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. I'd like to thank all our brothers, our tech team, all our brothers and sisters who contributed. We didn't get to all the comments. Barakallahu feekum for watching. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.